Allah, who has not betaken wife or son, who has no partner in sovereignty, nor does he have any protecting friend through dependence, and magnify him with for all his bounties. All praise be to Allah, who has no opposition in his rule, nor there is any challenge to his commands. All praise be to Allah, who has no counsel to meddle with his operation of creation, nor there is anything similar to him in his greatness. All praise be to Allah, whose commandments and praise are active in the creation. His glory is evident through his kindness. His distant, overflowing generosity is freely available. His unlimited bestowals do not exhaust, and whose opulent bestowals increase him nothing but magnanimity and generosity. Verily, he is mighty, abundantly giver. O Allah, I beseech you for the little from the much, along with my great need for it, and your needlessness, for it is since eternity. For me, it is so big, but for you, it is effortless and easy. O Allah, as you pardon my sins, overlook my mistakes, take a lenient view of my disorderly conduct, cover up my hideous actions, and treat my numerous offenses with forbearance, which I have committed mistakenly and willfully. All that tempted me to ask for that which I do not deserve from you, that is, you may grant me part of your mercy, show me part of your all-powerfulness, and show me signals of your response to me. So I am now supplicating you with security and beseeching you with entertainments, neither afraid nor fearful, insisting on you in which that I face to you. But when your response delayed, I out of my ignorance would blame you. Although perhaps slowing down may be a blessing in disguise, because you alone know the consequences of all matters. So I have never seen such a noble master, more accommodating to such a dissatisfied servant than you are to me. O Lord, you give an invitation, but I turn it down. You become familiar with me, but I do not care for you. And you show affection to me, but I do not correspond to you. As if you are overreaching me, yet all that have not stopped you from having mercy upon me, doing favors to me, and blessing me out of your magnanimity and generosity. So please have mercy on your ignorant servants, and bestow upon him with the favors of your beneficence. Verily, you are all magnanimous and all generous. All praise be to Allah, the Lord of serenity, who allows arcs to flow and cease, who controls the winds, who causes the day to break, who administers the authority, and who is the Lord of the worlds. O Allah, be to Allah for his indulgence, although he has full acquaintance with all things. All praise be to Allah for his amnesty, although he has full power over all things. All praise be to Allah for the respite that he allows in spite of provocation. He is able to do whatever he wills. All praise be to Allah, the creator of all created beings, who makes sustenance feel freely available, who starts the day, who is the owner of glory and might, favors and bounties, and who is so far away that none can ever see him. And at the same time, he is so nigh that he is fully aware of even the whispering secrets. Blessed and exalted be he. All praise be to Allah, who has no equal to challenge him, nor is there an image comparable to him, nor is there a helper to assist him. He tames the powerful by his force, and disgraced are the great ones before his greatness. So he, through his power, fulfills that which he wills. All praise be to Allah, who gives answers to me whenever I call him, covers up my shortcomings, yet I disobey him, and gives me the largest part of bounties, yet I do not show him gratitude. Many an auspicious favor he had given me, many a terrible danger he turned off, and many a blossoming joy he had made available for me. Therefore I praise him with thankfulness, and mention him with exaltation. And praise be to Allah, whose screens cannot be penetrated, whose door is not locked, whose beseecher is not rejected, and one who hopes him is not disappointed. All praise be to Allah, who secures the frightened ones, comes to the help of the upright ones, promotes the causes of the weak ones, annihilates autocrats, destroys rulers and appoints others instead. All praise be to Allah, the eradicator of tyrants, the terminator of the unjust ones, the catcher of the fugitives, the punisher of the unjust ones, the aid of the aid seekers, the settler of the needs of the beseecher, and the support of the faithful believers. All praise be to Allah in his awe-inspiring fear. The heavens and its dwellers tremble and shiver. The earth and its inhabitants shake and quiver. And the oceans and all that which float and swim in their waters flow together in excitement and tumult. All praise be to Allah, who has guided us to this. We could not truly have been led aright if Allah had not guided us. All praise be to Allah, who creates, but he is not created, gives subsistence, but he needs no provisions, feeds, but he takes no nourishments, causes the living to die, and brings the dead to life. But he is the ever-living, who never dies. In his hands is all the good. He is able to do all things. O Allah, please do send blessings to Muhammad, your servant and messenger, confident friend and beloved intimates, the choicest of your created beings, the bearer of your sacraments, and the conveyor of your messages, with the most superior, the most exquisite, and the most handsomer, the most perfect, the most upright, the most prospering, the most pleasant, the most thoroughly purified, the most sublime, the most and the best blessings, advantages, mercies, and affections, and salutations that you have ever bestowed upon any one of your servants and prophets, messengers, choicest people, and those honored by you from among your created beings. O Allah, please do send the blessings to Ali, the commander of the believers, the successor of the messenger of the Lord of the worlds, your servant, your beloved representative, the brother of your messenger, your decisive argument over the mankind, your most important sign, and the greatest news from you. Please do send blessings to the truthful and pure lady, Fatima, the doyen of the women of the world. Please do send blessings to the sons of the mercy to the worlds, and the two leaders of true guidance, Al-Hassan and Al-Hussein, the two chiefs of dwellers of paradise. Please do send blessings to the leaders of the Muslims, Ali ibn al-Hussein, Muhammad ibn Ali, Jafar ibn Muhammad, Musa ibn Jafar, Ali ibn Musa, Muhammad ibn Ali, Ali ibn Muhammad, Al-Hassan ibn Ali, and the successor, the guide, and the rightly guided. Those imams are decisive arguments over your servants. and your trustworthy confidence in your lands, with blessings that are numerous and non-stop. O Allah, please do send blessings to the custodian of your commandments, the vigilant guardian, the reliable patron, and the awaited establisher of justice. And please surround him with your favorite angels, and assist him with the Holy Spirit. O Lord of the worlds, O Allah, please choose him to be the caller to your book, and the establisher of your religion. Make him succeed in the earth, as you cause those who were before him to succeed. Establish for him faith which you have approved for him, and give him in exchange safety after the fear. He serves you, ascribes nothing as partner to you. O Allah, please grant him power, make him the source of power. Grant him support, make him the means of your victory. Help him with a mighty help. Make him prevail over all the easiness, and delegate him your controlling authority. O Allah, please make prevalent your religion and the norms of your prophet through him, so that he will not have to hide any item of truth, for fear of any of the creatures. O Allah, we ardently desire that you confer upon us a respectful government, through which you may give might to Islam and its followers, humiliate hypocrisy and its people, and include us among those who invite people to the obedience to you, and lead them to your approved path. Give us the good of this world and the world to come. O Allah, let us bear out which you make known to us as the truth.
No, answer the question.
And let us attain that which we fall short to do. O Allah, through him set in order our disorder, gather and unite our flock, stitch together our ripped open separation, increase our few numbers, lifts us up from our degradation, grant wealth to the needy among us, pull us out from our depths, set up our poverty, fill the gap of confusion among us. Make easy all difficulties we may face. Refine our substance and style. Release us from captivity. Make successful our applications. Fulfill your promises to us. Give answers to our prayers. Respond to our requests. Make us attain our hopes in this world as well as the world to come. And grant us beyond our wishes. O most favorable of all those who may be besought, and most magnanimous of all those who may grant requests. Through him heal our breasts, remove the rage of our hearts, and in the event of dispute in the matter of truth, show us the right path. Verily, you guide whoever you will to the right path. Grant us victory over our enemy. O God of truth, respond to us. O Allah, we complain to you about the departure of our Prophet. Your blessings be on him and on his household. The absence of our leader, the big numbers of our enemies, the few numbers of us, widespread disorder, and the vicissitudes of time against us. So please do send blessings to Muhammad and his household, and help us overcome all that through victory from you that you expedite, through relieving us from our injuries, through your help that you confirm, through bringing in the role of justice and fair play, through mercy that you expand over us, and through good health that you cover us with. In the name of your mercy, O most merciful, all those
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. Ahsantum. Jazakumullah khair for the beautiful recitation. We've been reciting the dua in Arabic for the entire month. And alhamdulillah, we had two opportunities. The other night we had it in Urdu, and tonight we had it in English so that we have a deeper understanding of these phenomenal words of Imam of our time. Before I begin, once again, please recite another Surah Fatiha for the marhumin of tonight's program. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. Also, let's recite 5 times Amma Yujib for all of those people who are in need of du'as, maybe suffering due to COVID-19, or maybe may have other illnesses. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring them out of their difficulties and provide for them quick recovery, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Amma yujibu al-muttarra idha da'ahu wa yakshifu as-su'. أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه يكشف السوء أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء ويجعلكم خلفاء الأرض أإله مع الله قليلا ما تذكرون. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. Just quick announcements. What's coming up inshallah tonight after the speech. Stick around for Dua Kumail. It's the last Shab Jummah in the holy month of Ramadan. This is the night for you to ask for your hajat from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as should be any Shab Jummah, but specifically tonight, as it's the last opportunity in this holy month of Ramadan. Tomorrow night, as you know, Friday, we will have the family trivia game night, which you saw the announcement for as it was playing. It's going to be starting at 11 p.m. Also on Saturday, which will be probably the last night for our program, inshallah, Sunday being the first day of Shawwal, and you'll get the email in reference to Eid Salat and the instructions about that it will not be taking place in Masjid, of course, but we are working to arrange a program where Mu'mineen can benefit live from it. So Saturday night would be our last program, and of course, because the program, we won't have Dua Iftidah, and instead of giving a lecture and speaking, we have a program in cooperation with Sheikh Bilal Hussein of a Q&A session. So this will be a live Q&A session starting at 9:30, and there'll be volunteers. They'll be taking your questions live and forwarding it to us, and inshallah we'll try and get to as many questions as possible. And then on Monday, as you saw, the virtual Eid celebrations for children 10 and younger. For more information, you can contact nazrashid@gmail.com. And this is again provided by the Al-Mahdi workshops. Rahamallahu man qara'a Surat Al-Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim. Sirata alladhina an'amta alayhim غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. صلى الله محمد وعلى محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي قصرت عن رؤيته أبصار الناظرين وعجزت عن نعته أوهام الواصفين والحمد لله رب العالمين. الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين بالقاسم محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنما الصدقات للفقراء والمساكين والعاملين عليها والمعلفة قلوبهم وفي الرقاب والغارمين وفي سبيل الله وابن السبيل فريضة من الله والله عليم حكيم صدق الله العلي العظيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. The verse that I recited for the discussion tonight is chapter number 9, Surah Tawbah, ayat number 60, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and most of you may have understood from the tone and the words that were recited in this surah or in this ayah, that the word sadaqat has appeared. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says the charities are only for the poor and the needy. This should clear a lot of, concepts that people have in reference to, and these types of charities and what's the purpose behind it and what could it be used for. And those who imply to collect them and those whose hearts are to be reconciled. And for the freedom of the slaves and the debtors and in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and for the traveler. This is an ordinance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah is all-knowing and all-wise. The reason I chose this ayah and many such ayat, this particular ayah refers towards a concept of zakat, and the concept which is not well known, especially in our fiqh, to us. It's known in the fiqh, but not known to the congregants. There are actually two main wajib, taxes, if you want to call it, that are upon us. One is, in the form of zakat, and second is in the form of khums. And both of these are wajibat. Both of these are obligations. They're not, something like which is recommended that you should do it if you want and you don't have to. No, this is amongst the wajibat, just like you have your regular prayers, daily fajr, dhuhr, asr, maghrib, isha, and your fast of the month of Ramadan. Similar to that, khums and zakat are your obligations. And sometimes these are neglected because for various reasons, maybe, and I'm being very optimistic, because people don't know about the masail of their wealth and when it comes to, taking care of the taxes that they have to pay as far as their obligation is concerned. A lot of time for other ibadat, people say this is ordained by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because it doesn't cost me anything to pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It doesn't cost me anything to fast for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hajj, not many people go ahead and become mustati. Therefore, Hajj is also out of the way. Then remains the zakat and khums. And because, there's really no accountability, it's not like company like IRS is checking up upon you that did you file your taxes or not? Did you pay taxes this year or not? No such thing is happening. Marja taqlid or no miskin or fuqara or those who are employed to collect them are coming after you. They're not looking over your wealth. They're not coming after you. They're not trying to persuade you by any means. Therefore, there isn't any accountability, and that could be one of the reasons why people are neglectful of these two ibadat. So take a look at it from the perspective that it is an equal ibadah, such as your salat, such as your fast. The word zakat, is used very often in Quran. On numerous occasions, you find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when He says, وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ وَأَقَامُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتَوُا الزَّكَاةَ يُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ يُؤْتُونَ الزَّكَاةَ. Different conjugatives of the same verb have been used alongside with salat. So wherever the discussion of salat has happened and mentioned Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala along with salat, He mentions zakat. And I could have chosen any one of those ayat in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the word zakat. But I chose this ayat because here it is referring to faridatan min Allah. On the other places where it is mentioning like that, wa'atu zakat, it could be referring to various types of charities that are sometimes are wajib and some of them are actually mustahab for you. Therefore, this particular ayah, when it speaks of sadaqat, it's not speaking of sadaqat which are voluntary. This is speaking of the sadaqat which are what? Which are ordained by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's an obligation upon you. So therefore, zakat became obligatory in Makkah. This is one of the first things that actually became wajib on the new Muslims. Salat became wajib much later on. Fast in the month of Ramadan became wajib much later on. There was no mention of doing Hajj while in the life of the Makkah. It was only after they traveled and so many of these things became wajib later on. Similarly, a lot of things that became haram, gradually, not right away. But when they speak about zakat is, became obligatory in Makkah. While Muslimin were still in Makkah, in their Meccan life, this was one of the first of the obligations. Because, since there weren't many Muslims at that time and they didn't have much wealth anyway, so they used to pay, themselves. And this was a means of survival for them. So amongst them, whoever were affluent, they would be able to take care of those who were in need and they were poor. After a Muslim government was established in Medina, paying and collecting and, depositing zakat, into the Baitul Mal, the treasury became mandatory. But initially in Meccan life, it was not something which was, dealt with in that sort of organized way. But it was after the establishment of Muslim, government. Leadership had the authority to implement this wajib based on this verse. خُذْ مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ صَدَقَةً. Take from their wealth charity. And therefore, in many Muslim countries, this is an obligation. And just like in the country that we live in, you have to pay taxes. You file for your taxes, and then you pay taxes on, pretty much everything, and as well as your earnings. And when you pay taxes on your earnings and things that you buy, and there's no way of challenging it because this is a norm of this society. Similarly, in the Muslim countries, the collection of zakat is an obligation and something which is done by the government. So zakat is not specific to Islam. So don't think that Islam introduced this law. No, rather it existed in the previous divine religions as well. When Prophet Isa والسلام, spoke in the cradle of his, in the arms of his mother, rather, he said, "Awsani bis salati was zakat." He enjoined me, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enjoined me to maintain the prayer and to pay zakat. This is in Surah Maryam, ayat number 31. So we find that, when Hazrat Isa والسلام, is speaking about the fact that he has become a Nabi, he's been given a doctrine, and he's a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so right away he says, Allah has done what? Awsani bis salati was zakat. Allah has enjoined me. He has given me this, wasiyat, or he has implemented upon me. He has, ordained upon me that I should, perform salat and I should perform or give zakat. Similarly, find in the life of Hazrat Musa والسلام, addressed, he addressed Bani Israel, وَإِذْ أَخَذْنَا مِيثَاقَ بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ. And then towards the end of the ayah, ayah number 83 from Surah Baqarah, وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ. That this was the covenant that was taken from Bani Israel, that what? Aqimus salat, that you would establish the prayer, wa'atu zakat, and then you would also pay the zakat. Quran also mentions generally about all of the prophets. So these were the two specific examples of Hazrat Musa and Hazrat Isa alayhim as-salatu was-salam. But we also find in the life of, generally about all of the prophets. It says, وَجَعَلْنَاهُمْ أَئِمَّةً يَهْدُونَ بِأَمْرِنَا. So speaking about prophets, that we made them to be imams, we made them to be, guide of, our command. وَأَرْحَيْنَا إِلَيْهِمْ فِعْلَ الْخَيْرَاتِ وَإِقَامِ الصَّلَاةِ وَإِيتَاءِ الزَّكَاةِ. That we ordain and we reveal to them concerning the performance of good deeds, فِعْلَ الْخَيْرَاتِ, the maintenance of prayer, إِقَامِ الصَّلَاةِ وَإِيتَاءِ الزَّكَاةِ, and giving of the zakat. This is in Surah Anbiya, ayat number 73. So we find that it's not something which is an innovation of Islam, rather something which existed in the previous adyan and the religions as well. We find that the 4 different descriptions have been given about zakat in Quran. One is that it has appeared in the form of alms, that وَآتِ الْمَالَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ ذَوِي الْقُرْبَى. Second is in the form of sadaqah. The word sadaqah is used for it. خُذْ مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ صَدَقَةً. Third, the word infaq is used for it when it says يُقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةِ وَيُنْفِقُوا, that they establish the prayer and then they do infaq of their wealth. And lastly, the word zakat has been used as well. يُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةِ وَيُؤْتُونَ الزَّكَاةَ, which is probably used more than any other of these words, which are reflecting toward, this wajib form of charity. So what is the importance of it? In Quran, zakat is mentioned alongside with salat. That itself highlights the importance of it. And no other obligation has been mentioned in this way, side by side, alongside with salat, the way zakat has been mentioned. That's why, according to some narrations, condition for the acceptance of your salat lies in zakat. The fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning salat and zakat back to back is that it is basically the condition for the acceptance of your salat, that unless you give zakat, your salat is not accepted. Now, therefore, they have broadened the sphere of zakat, that it's not just that obligatory zakat, because it may not become obligatory upon me. Therefore, what have I done if it's not becoming an obligation upon me? That, if I don't deal with livestock, and if I don't have farms, and it's no longer a practice to trade in gold and silver, then zakat is not going to become obligatory upon me. Therefore, what do I do for that? Well, there's still some zakat that becomes due upon you, and that is in the form of zakatul fitrah, which inshallah will be happening on the night of Eid. So just to highlight the importance that it is, it highlights the connection with the creator and the connection with the creation. That's why the word salat and zakat is mentioned together. Salat is your connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, while zakat is your connection with the rest of the creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And both of these connections are equally important. So zakat is haram upon sadat unless the giver and the receiver both are sayyid. A group of Bani Hashim demanded to collect the zakat for 4-legged animals, and hence they'll receive partial compensation from it. Prophet replied, zakat is haram upon me and you. So for using that tradition, you might not find it in Quran. At least I don't remember seeing it in Quran, this law, but at least in the riwayat of the Holy Prophet, you find that he mentioned it to be haram upon him and on his family. So the law of zakat is not because Islam has any interest in the poor, who is the receiver, and in the rich, who is the giver of the zakat. Islam can care less when it comes to the statuses of these two individuals, the one who's rich and the one who's poor. Rather, it is there to address and solve a reality that exists in the society. What is that reality? That some are poor and some are rich. Even the rich in the society could be in the need of it. So therefore, it's not necessarily coming from the rich and going to the poor. That's why the sphere of zakat was very broad, that it could reach those who are wabn sabil, those who may be well off in their own hometowns, but because they're stranded somewhere and they don't have the means to get by, zakat becomes obligatory to be given to that person. So they are one of the recipients of the zakat. So even the rich in the society could be in need of it. If their property is stolen, it's burned or taken away in war, or as I mentioned, the example of a traveler. In an Islamic system of government, there must be a budget which takes care of these things and those who are underprivileged. That's why Quran in Surah Al-Dariyat says, وَفِي أَمْوَالِهِمْ حَقٌّ لِلسَّائِلِ وَالْمَحْرُومِ. That and there was a share in their wealth for the beggar and the deprived. So I'll skip through the majority of this discussion, which is in reference to the concept of zakat, and then the importance of zakatul fitrah, which I'm sure you'll have a lot of questions, and we can address.